The steady hum of hospital machines was the only sound that filled the room. Elena Márquez, one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country, sat on the edge of a sterile hospital bed, her hands trembling as she held the smallest fingers she had ever touched. Her baby girl, Isabella, barely a day old, lay inside a glass crib, her fragile chest rising and falling with painful effort. The tubes, the monitors, the faint hiss of oxygen. They were the only signs of life left. Elena had built empires, survived betrayals, even outwitted ruthless investors, but nothing had ever made her feel this helpless. The doctor's words still echoed in her mind, cruel and final. Your daughter's heart won't make it past 24 hours. The walls of the room were a cruel shade of white, the kind that made everything feel colder. Outside, thunder rolled and rain washed over the hospital windows, streaking down like tears that refused to stop. Elena's own tears finally fell, silently tracing down her flawless but exhausted face. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, hadn't spoken to anyone since the diagnosis. Every time a nurse tried to comfort her, she would shake her head. What could they possibly say? Money couldn't fix this. For the first time in her life, she couldn't buy time. Her security team had cleared the hallway outside. No cameras, no journalists, just Elena and the emptiness of her grief. She remembered decorating the nursery weeks ago, filling it with pink blankets, soft toys, and gold-trimmed walls. Everything was perfect, designed by the best. But now it meant nothing. Her empire, her success, her name, none of it mattered when she looked at the baby who hadn't even had a chance to live. She pressed her forehead against the glass crib, whispering, "If I could give you my heart, I would. Take everything, Isabella. Just live." Her voice cracked, breaking like thin glass. The machines began to beep irregularly, the monitor flashing warning lights. Elena's body went numb. Nurses hurried in, checking vitals, adjusting oxygen, but their faces gave away the truth. One of them glanced at the clock. 20 hours since birth. Time was running out. Elena backed into a corner, covering her mouth to stifle her sobs, unable to watch her baby fade. Lightning illuminated the window, and for a brief second, her reflection looked like a stranger. A broken mother, stripped of power, begging the universe for mercy. Then, faintly, through the noise of the storm and the chaos of the machines, came a soft knock at the door. It was hesitant, almost apologetic. Elena turned, her eyes red and unfocused. The door creaked open, revealing a small boy standing there, soaked from the rain, clutching an old frayed teddy bear. His clothes were too big, his shoes muddy, but his expression was gentle and calm, like someone who had seen sadness before and understood it. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I heard your baby's sick. Can I see her?" Elena blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. The nurse moved to stop him, but something in his eyes, something pure, unshakable, made her freeze. For the first time in days, Elena's heart stirred with curiosity. Who was this child? How did he even get past the guards? The boy stepped closer, his small hand tightening around the teddy bear as he looked toward the fragile infant behind the glass. "She doesn't have to be alone," he said simply. His words lingered in the air like a quiet promise. Elena didn't know why, but she couldn't bring herself to say no. Samuel approached the crib with slow, careful steps, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace of the room. The soft glow of the monitors reflected in his wide brown eyes. Elena watched him closely, her arms folded tightly against her chest, unsure whether to stop him or let him be. The nurses hesitated by the door, whispering nervously, who was this child, and why did he look so certain, so calm, in a place filled with fear? Samuel didn't seem to notice their tension. He gently placed his old, faded teddy bear beside the baby, the bear's stitched smile worn from years of love. "My mama said this bear helps when you feel scared," he murmured. "He's been with me since I was sick." Elena frowned, confused. "You were sick?" she asked, her voice hoarse from crying. Samuel nodded. "The doctor said I wouldn't wake up. But I did. Mama said God heard me because I prayed from here." He pressed a small hand against his chest. "Not from my mouth, from my heart." His words, innocent yet profound, hung in the sterile air. Elena felt something shift deep inside her, a warmth she hadn't felt since before the diagnosis, before the fear. Samuel climbed onto a small stool by the crib. He leaned close to Isabella, whose breathing had grown shallower, her tiny lips tinged blue. He reached out, his hand trembling as he touched her fragile fingers. "Hi, baby," he whispered softly. "I'm Samuel. You don't have to be afraid. You're loved." His voice broke slightly, as though he could feel the weight of the moment even though he was just a child. Then, closing his eyes, he began to pray quietly. The words were simple, but the sincerity in them was overwhelming. "Please, God, give her my strength. Take my heart if you need to. Just don't let her go." A strange stillness filled the room. The steady beeping of the heart monitor faltered for a second, then steadied again. The nurse gasped, eyes darting between the screen and the baby. Elena's breath caught. The baby's pulse, once weak and erratic, began to stabilize. A faint flush returned to her cheeks. It was impossible. The doctor who rushed in moments later stopped mid-step, staring in disbelief. Her oxygen levels. "They're climbing," he whispered. "But how?" Elena couldn't take her eyes off Samuel. His small body seemed to sway with exhaustion, his face pale but peaceful. He smiled faintly, looking down at the baby as if they shared a secret only they understood. "See, she's stronger now," he said softly. Elena moved closer, kneeling beside him, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice trembling between awe and desperation. Samuel turned to her with an innocent smile that didn't quite belong to this world. "I just gave her a little of my heart," he said, tapping his chest lightly. "She needed it more than I did." His eyes fluttered closed for a moment, and Elena reached out instinctively, steadying him. His small hand slipped from hers, but he stood firm, looking one last time at Isabella, who was now breathing evenly, peacefully. The doctor kept mumbling something about impossible readings, and nurses moved frantically checking wires, updating charts. But Elena heard none of it. All she saw was her baby, alive, stable, and the small boy who had somehow made it happen. When Samuel turned to leave, she called out after him, "Wait!" But he just smiled faintly over his shoulder and whispered, "She's going to be okay now," before disappearing into the dimly lit hallway, leaving behind only the scent of rain and the soft hum of a miracle. The night had passed in a blur of disbelief and quiet tears. By morning, the storm had faded, leaving a gentle light spilling through the hospital window. Elena hadn't slept. She sat beside her daughter's crib, her hand resting on the glass, afraid that if she blinked, the miracle would vanish. But Isabella was still there, pink-cheeked, warm, breathing steadily. The monitors that once screamed in panic now hummed in perfect rhythm. The doctors were baffled. They whispered among themselves, reviewing charts and data that made no sense. "Her heart has repaired itself," one finally said, shaking his head. "There's no medical explanation." Elena barely heard them. She only stared at her daughter's tiny chest rising and falling, as if each breath was a gift from heaven. Then she remembered him. Samuel, the boy with the rain-soaked clothes and the teddy bear. The memory of his small trembling hands and that soft, unshakable voice brought a lump to her throat. She needed to see him, to thank him, to understand what had happened. Grabbing her coat, she rushed out into the hallway, her heels echoing on the cold tile floors. The little boy from last night, where is he? She asked every nurse, every orderly, every staff member she passed. But each time she was met with puzzled expressions and polite confusion. "Ma'am, there are no children admitted in this wing," one nurse insisted. "And certainly not anyone named Samuel." Elena frowned, shaking her head. "He was here. He came into my room. He had a teddy bear." She described him, small, dark-skinned, kind eyes, but no one seemed to know him. The security team reviewed the hallway cameras at her request, and when the footage loaded, Elena leaned forward, heart pounding. The screen showed her crying beside the crib, then moments later, her looking toward the door. But no child entered. She froze. "That can't be right," she whispered. The head nurse put a hand on her shoulder gently. "Sometimes, in moments of great pain, we see hope in different forms." But Elena knew what she saw. She had felt him. His warmth, his words, his faith, they were too real to be imagined. She returned to the room, her mind racing. Isabella stirred softly, letting out a faint, healthy cry. The sound Elena had longed to hear since the day she was born. Tears filled her eyes again as she reached into the crib and lifted her daughter for the first time without fear. The weight of the baby in her arms was the most beautiful feeling she had ever known. That was when she noticed something resting on the white sheets beside her. A small paper heart, drawn with crayon, the edges uneven and smudged. In the center were 3 words, written in shaky, childish handwriting. "Keep believing, Mama." Elena clutched the note to her chest, her tears falling freely. The teddy bear was gone. The boy had vanished. But the miracle remained. She looked out the window as the morning sun broke through the clouds, its golden light washing over the city below. For the first time in her life, Elena felt something stronger than wealth or power. She felt grace. She pressed her lips to Isabella's forehead and whispered, "Thank you, Samuel, whoever you are." And somewhere beyond the hospital walls, perhaps in a place where pain no longer existed, a little boy with brown eyes and a heart full of love smiled quietly, his heartbeat echoing in perfect rhythm with the life he had saved.